Welcome back to Winning Flag Football. I'm your host, Coach Art. Now, I want to talk with you about something very small but very meaningful, and it's around pre-snap read. And this kind of builds on what we were talking about in our last episode, which was about keeping the playbook really as simple as possible. I know there's a lot of desire to have a fully robust playbook with a lot of variations and options, especially, for anybody who likes to play Madden and has a bit of physical skill. They may kind of assume that the lines on the page translate into direct action, just like on the video game. I have fallen victim to that. As a younger man, I put together an insanely large playbook for a pickup league that we were in, and it was just unwieldy in the extreme. It really is better to have just a few plays that you practice really, really well so that you can rely on them when you need them. So the pre-snap read is one of those things that seems like it would be obvious and easy for folks to pick up, and it really isn't. So I want to talk with you a little bit about pre-snap read, because you can, if you kind of rein it in and scale it appropriately, it's actually something you can take advantage of. So what we mean by a pre-snap read is really from the quarterback position, looking at the defense and assessing what it is that they're most likely to do based on their defensive alignment and the pressure and coverage. So you're using the alignment, which is where the players are lined up on the field, to predict what kind of pressure, what kind of rush you're going to get, and what kind of coverage, how the cover people are going to drop into their respective areas. And there's basics, right? Like from a coverage standpoint, there's man and there's zone. And yes, there's combination coverages and all kinds of other stuff, but in flag football, it's pretty much just man and zone. And more often than not, if you're playing against a team with good talent, they're going to be playing man. So you want to know what the coverage is. And one of the best ways to do that is to see whether the alignment is head up or sort of shaded away. The classic look is in a 6 or 7 man league. You can have two safeties kind of 10 to 12 yards back, splitting the difference between the middle of the field and the sideline. And that's a typical cover 2 look. Those two safeties are typically responsible for deep half coverage. And then everyone else underneath is either going to rush or play underneath zones, or they're going to be combined in some sort of man zone coverage. So you're really looking at where are those deep safeties. And so like if you've only got one guy back there, one person at 10 or 12 yards, usually lined up right in the center of the field, that's going to be kind of a cover 1 look, which means you've got a lot of underneath coverage, probably some zone sprinkled in with some some man coverage sprinkled in with some short zones. But that one deep safety is going to kind of range sideline to sideline, and they may actually kind of roll their coverage one way or the other. The possibilities are endless. And one thing that I want to counsel you on is don't run yourself ragged trying to be perfect in predicting what the defense is going to do, and then building your entire playbook around the Nostradamus quality prediction of your quarterback to recognize what's going on. This is especially true in youth football. Anytime you've got kids under the age of 18, they're not going to make the kinds of quality decisions that you would expect from a seasoned Madden player or a high school football quarterback or a college level or a pro level, right? So I think it's really important that we recognize that professional football players work at this as their job, and they're watching game film, and they're practicing a pretty extensive playbook, and they're getting timing and rhythm together. And all of that stuff is sort of invisible to the average fan. So just don't fall victim to the idea that you can sort of practice these things a few times and that they will magically become as successful as the pros. So what kind of scaling do we have? Well, I've got a 3-step process for doing a pre-snap read from the quarterback position, and I think it's a pretty straightforward process, and it's something that you can use just to try to give yourself a little bit of an edge so the quarterback can make a good decision. So the first step in the pre-snap read is to count the rushers. So what you're looking for is not only the rushers on the line, but also people who are likely to blitz, people who are showing blitz. And you can tell when somebody's showing blitz, they're probably leaning in a little bit. They may actually be literally cheating up, kind of scooting towards the line subconsciously because they're trying to give themselves a better angle or a better jump on snap. So you can kind of tell who's rushing. Now, really skilled players are going to hide that, but for the most part, you'll be able to see who's rushing. And so you're counting the rushers because you need to have built into your system that trigger, that kind of hot route trigger that happens when the rushers reaches a certain level. So let's take 6-man flag football for fun. So in 6-man on defense, you've got typically 1 rusher. You'd have 3 underneath and 2 high. So you might have two deep safeties at 12 yards. You've got 3 cover people, say a third across the field. So you get like a middle linebacker right in the dead center, and then you'd have 2 cornerbacks, 1 on either side. Again, splitting the difference between the middle and the sideline. And typically that would be kind of a cover 2 look where you've got deep half, the underneath thirds, and then 1 rusher going after the quarterback. Well, if you're a quarterback and you kind of take a peek out at the defense and you see this alignment, that is a pretty good estimation. You've got receivers kind of spread out, but nobody's exactly lined up over the receiver. That's a really good indication that they're probably in zone. And you can always build into your playbook from those formations a little bit of motion to give away what's happening. So all you have to do is take a slot receiver and bring him in motion. So you can start him on the left. If you want the play to run to the right and you want the slot receiver on the right, you can just call the play and tell the slot receiver, start on the left, I'm going to motion you across. And that way, when that motion, that kind of set, and that motion comes across, if nobody on the defense moves, then they're in zone. If somebody runs across the formation with that tracking receiver, right, they follow them across during their motion, it's more than likely man. Now, if you're playing against, a professional level team or a high level college team or whatnot, yeah, they may have disguised blitzes. They may have zones that roll. They may be able to release people, when they kind of move from one half of the field to the other half of the field, and they might be able to actually execute that. But by and large, especially in these kind of youth leagues, there's not going to be that level of sophistication on defense. And even if a coach tries to put that in, unless they are practicing it diligently, doing a lot of whiteboard work, it's not going to work the way it's drawn up. It's just not. So by and large, you're going to keep these things simple. And so you can basically look, is it a cover 1 with a single high safety and a lot of coverage underneath? Is it cover 2 where you have 2 deep halves? Is it cover 3 where you've got 3 people at that depth of about 12 yards? And that's something that you can see if your quarterback has a good arm and pretty decent accuracy. They may, instead of trying to rush that quarterback, especially if it's a quick release or if the quarterback can run well, they may just kind of sit 3 people back there. So the alignment and counting the rushers is very important. So in this particular 6-man, 1 rusher is going to suggest zone. 2 rushers is going to suggest man. Because if you've got 2 people rushing in on the quarterback, that means there's only 4 other people left in coverage, and very likely they're going to be head up on their the person across from them. So counting the rushers can give you a little bit of an edge. And what information does that give you? So now that I know they're in zone, I can predict what type of zone that is. So in our cover 2 look, where we have 2 deep safeties covering deep half, I know that the weakness of that defense is up the sideline. There's a gap that is beyond the cornerback who's short and basically a little beyond the safety who's deep, but right along the sideline. That's the gap in a cover 2. So you can really attack that with a deep go route if you've got a quarterback who can make that pass. If not, then you can run crossing routes all day against that kind of zone, and you can chew it up because, generally speaking, again, at this level, the zone coverage is inconsistent, right? They're covering an area of the field, and they're probably not going to be super skilled at kind of riding a person through the zone and releasing them and kind of coming back to that neutral position. I remember I trained my teams to do that, and so our zone coverage was pretty good, but not everybody works on that. So the first thing, count the rushers. Next is identify the coverage, which is counting the safeties and locating possible zones. And then 3 is choose your target. So the quarterback has to have that play diagram in their head and really understand where the progression is. So in a 6-man game, you've got 5 potential receivers. Well, you're not going to read all 5 of those. And if you are, look, if you're building a playbook where you read all 5, you may have something that's too complicated for a pickup league. You really want to have kind of a 1-2, an if-then combination. And so if you've got, say, 2 receivers on the right-hand side, and they're going to do kind of a smash concept where you've got the inside receiver is going to kind of go on a deep flag and the outside receiver is going to run a quick hitch, right? And you get this kind of high-low thing. That's fine, but that's where the quarterback's going to look. And so in that smash concept, if we've got a cover 2 look, then that quarterback can be very confident that that inside flag is going to be open if he puts the ball on time and on target. That short hitch is actually going to gobble up the cornerback who's going to stay short. And they're going to release that inside slot. And when that inside slot cuts 45 degrees towards the sideline in that flag route, the safety is going to be in a trailing position. And so if the quarterback places that ball on time and on target, then it will be probably a 15-yard gain, So we've got to have that level of discipline and sort of understand, where am I going to find my 1-2 punch and make the decision of either this or that. So if you can count the rushers and recognize that it's either a combination of zone or man, and then identify that coverage by looking at the safeties and locating possible zones, then you can choose your target, which is finding the mismatch or finding that best receiver who's going to be your correct target. If it's man coverage, for example, you may want to just choose your best receiver, especially if it's a tall person who can get up high, and just hang it up to him, knowing that it's a 50-50 ball and they've got a better shot than the defender. So good luck with that, with pre-snap read. I hope that helps. And remember, keep it simple. We want to make sure that everybody's having fun and that they're not being asked to do too much on a particular play. Good luck in your season, and we'll see you next week. Take care.